I don't do sponsored reviews. However, having said that, I do get asked pretty much on a daily basis to do a sponsored review. So clearly, there are people out there doing sponsored reviews, and I have seen media packs of people where it actually says sponsored review.
Yeah. I mean,
obviously, we're not going to call anybody specific out. But what do you think of sponsored reviews?
It's a two-part answer. It's a two-part answer, and the first part is, look, I love that you called out the way you do unboxings in a sponsored capacity, right? Because there are so many different ways to do things. Like if, as a YouTube consumer, if one of my favorite YouTubers does a sponsored video on something I'm interested in, and I watch it with the full understanding that it is a paid-for thing, and I'm watching it in that context, there's nothing wrong with it. I think the only content category that really should never exist is that it's a sponsored review or a sponsored comparison, which in some cases is even worse, because what you're saying then is you're leveraging the SEO power of the word review, which is just dirty because you're stealing views from me, who's actually reviewing the thing. Yep. And second, your review, quote unquote, is being reviewed by the company that is paying you before you publish, so that they can make sure that you say that that people should buy it, essentially.
Yeah.
And exactly. I just can't get behind that format at all. I think those should be illegal. In many countries they are. Right?
Yeah. It's crazy how many people get away with it, though, and this is the thing. I mean, like the comparison thing, I always get, can you do a sponsored comparison? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. I cannot do a sponsored comparison. If your product, I think, is worthwhile to compare to another device, I will do it organically. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I have done full sponsor videos, but I totally agree with you. In my personal, I mean, I've seen some reviewers who have said that they do sponsored reviews, but that's to prioritize the content from everything else that they're doing. So they're like, we're going to still give our honest opinions on the product, but what you're paying for is the prioritization of us doing your video, covering your product honestly, without... Now, that still is a little bit of a gray area for me, because you're still getting paid, so there's still going to be quite a bit of influence, or somewhat of an influence on that product. What do you think?
That's interesting. I was so tempted by that model back when I was at Pocket Now. I think we were kind of brainstorming on ways to do sponsored content, and I was like, well, it is interesting. If you just think about it, if the company, in an ideal world, the company does not have any control or preview of the content, they don't have any editorial input whatsoever. If they're paying you to put in your review into the queue, either at all, if you weren't going to cover it at all, or just prioritize it so it goes earlier than it otherwise would. It's seductive because it's almost okay to my brain. It's almost like, okay, well, and look, and if you do that and you disclose that that's what you're doing, then it's of course okay, because you're not lying to anyone. You're just making a business decision based on how you run your channel. I think one of the things, the hinky part about it for me is one of the things that's always been important about the things I put in front of people on the channel, with very few exceptions. It's like, I'm showing you this because I'm interested in it, or it is newsworthy in a broad way. And when you introduce a paid element, you're creating a third category where you're like, I'm showing you this because I was paid to. That's fine. I don't think there's much wrong with it if we're saying what I said a second ago, which is, look, I'm not a journalist. I'm something different, something in between that and an influencer. I think it's not something I would do right now, but I would not say it doesn't get my blood boiling the way that a sponsored review does, or lying does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally feel you. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to hear the full podcast episode, then that will be linked down below. And if you want to see more clips like this, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss them. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf Speaks, and I'll see you next time.